The telephone connection from Wolfsschanze on November 24, 1942, brought Hermann Göring the order from Adolf Hitler that the Luftwaffe would supply Sixth Army at Stalingrad by air until relief forces broke through Soviet encirclement. Göring replaced the receiver with recognition that he had just received mission that would test whether his assurances about Luftwaffe capabilities had been realistic assessments or had been optimistic promises designed to maintain Hitler's confidence. The Reichsmarschall had built reputation on claims that German air power could accomplish objectives that conventional military wisdom suggested were impossible. The airlift to Stalingrad would either validate years of boasting or would expose the gap between Göring's rhetoric and Luftwaffe's actual capabilities under winter conditions against determined Soviet opposition. General Hans Jeschonnek served as chief of the Luftwaffe General Staff and had been among officers expressing skepticism about feasibility of sustained airlift to encircled army. Jeschonnek's calculations showed that Sixth Army required minimum 500 tons of supplies daily to maintain defensive capability, and that delivering such tonnage would require sortie rates that exceeded available aircraft and that assumed weather conditions permitting continuous operations. The professional military assessment was that airlift might supplement ground supply, but could not replace it entirely. Göring's response to Jeschonnek's briefing had been to insist that Luftwaffe would accomplish what Hitler ordered, regardless of technical difficulties. The initial planning conferences at Luftwaffe headquarters addressed organizational challenges of concentrating transport aircraft from across German-controlled Europe to airfields in southern Russia. Colonel Fritz Morzik commanded air transport operations and reported that assembling adequate numbers of Ju-52 transports would require withdrawing aircraft from training schools, from supply missions supporting other fronts, and from maintenance facilities where planes were being repaired. The concentration would take weeks to complete and would create shortages in other theaters that were already operating with minimal transport capacity. Field Marshal Wolfram von Richthofen commanded Luftflotte 4, providing air support for Southern Front, and would be responsible for executing airlift operations. Von Richthofen's assessment delivered to Göring in late November was that current weather conditions over southern Russia were marginal for transport operations, and that forecasts suggested deterioration through December and January. The meteorological reports documented that visibility at Stalingrad airfields averaged below minimums for safe operations on approximately half the days, and that conditions would worsen as winter intensified. Von Richthofen's recommendation was that airlift should be considered emergency measure rather than sustainable operation. Göring's public statements through late November emphasized Luftwaffe's determination to supply Sixth Army and portrayed mission as demonstration of German air power's superiority. The propaganda value of promising to sustain entire army by air was significant because it suggested that modern technology could overcome traditional military constraints. The contrast between public confidence and private concerns expressed by technical staff created tension within Luftwaffe command, where operational officers understood difficulties while political leadership demanded success. The first supply flights into Stalingrad pocket began on November 25th and immediately encountered problems that planning had anticipated but that Göring had minimized. The Soviet fighters operating from airfields around Encirclement intercepted transport aircraft and shot down several planes before effective fighter escort procedures were established. The anti-aircraft fire that Soviet forces directed at transport aircraft approaching Pitomnik airfield inside pocket was more intense than intelligence had projected. The losses on initial missions exceeded rates that could be sustained if aircraft attrition continued at similar levels. Major Erich Thiel commanded Transport Group flying supply missions and maintained detailed logs of operational difficulties. Thiel's reports documented that aircraft reaching Stalingrad often found airfields obscured by weather, requiring circling that consumed fuel and exposed planes to defensive fire. The unloading procedures on ground were chaotic because Sixth Army logistics personnel were overwhelmed by volume of arriving aircraft and because Soviet artillery periodically shelled airfields, disrupting operations. The turnaround times that should have allowed aircraft to make multiple daily flights were extended by ground delays that reduced sortie rates below planning assumptions. The tonnage figures that Göring received in early December showed deliveries averaging approximately 100 tons daily rather than the 500 tons that Sixth Army required. The shortfall was attributed to weather cancellations, to aircraft losses, to mechanical failures, and to reduced payload weights necessitated by fuel requirements for flying in combat conditions. Göring's response was to order increased sortie rates and to demand that crews accept higher risks, rather than acknowledging that operational concept was fundamentally flawed. General Martin Fiebig commanded 8th Air Corps, responsible for bomber operations on Southern Front, and was diverted to supporting airlift through provision of HE-111 bombers modified to carry supplies. Fiebig's assessment was that using medium bombers for transport missions was inefficient because their payload capacity was limited, and because diverting them from combat operations weakened air support for forces attempting to relieve Stalingrad. The resource allocation decisions forced choices between supporting airlift and supporting relief operations with insufficient assets available for both missions. The weather deterioration through December created conditions that grounded transport operations for days at a time. The temperature drops that accompanied winter storms created mechanical problems for aircraft engines that were not designed for extreme cold. The icing conditions that developed required de-icing procedures that were time-consuming and often ineffective. The fog and snow that reduced visibility made navigation difficult and made locating airfields inside pocket problematic. The cumulative effect of weather on operations was to reduce flying days to perhaps half of each month. Göring's visits to airfields in southern Russia during December were intended to boost morale and to demonstrate personal commitment to airlift mission. The conversations that Göring had with transport crews revealed frustration with impossible assignment and with casualties that were mounting as Soviet air defenses improved. The pilots reported that flying into Stalingrad had become suicide mission, where survival depended on luck rather than on skill. Göring's responses emphasized duty and sacrifice while avoiding acknowledgement that losses were unsustainable. The encirclement of Sixth Army had initially covered area large enough to include multiple airfields that could handle transport operations. The Soviet pressure through December gradually reduced pocket size and threatened airfields that were essential for airlift. The loss of Tatsinskaya airfield in late December, when Soviet forces overran the base, eliminated key facility and forced transport operations to rely on more distant airfields that reduced sortie efficiency. The operational radius from remaining bases to Stalingrad meant that aircraft spent greater proportion of flight time in transit rather than delivering supplies. General Friedrich Paulus commanded Sixth Army and sent increasingly desperate messages through December reporting that air supply was inadequate to sustain defensive operations. The rations had been reduced to starvation levels. The ammunition stocks were declining, the fuel for vehicles was exhausted, the wounded were dying from lack of medical supplies. Paulus's communications emphasized that airlift was failing and that breakout or relief were only alternatives to destruction. Göring's responses promised increased deliveries while privately recognizing that promises could not be kept. The relief operation launched by Field Marshal Erich von Manstein in mid-December created temporary hope that ground link to Stalingrad could be re-established. Göring supported relief effort through provision of close air support and through intensified airlift operations designed to sustain Sixth Army until relief forces arrived. The failure of relief operation to reach Stalingrad and subsequent Soviet counter-offensives that forced German withdrawal demonstrated that airlift would need to continue indefinitely rather than serving as temporary measure until ground resupply resumed. The personal cost to Göring of airlift failure became evident through January as losses mounted and deliveries remained far below requirements. The reputation that Göring had built on Luftwaffe invincibility was being destroyed by sustained operation that exposed limitations in equipment, in planning, and in leadership. The boasts about German air power that had characterized Göring's public persona appeared increasingly hollow as transport aircraft were shot down in numbers that shocked even pessimistic observers. Colonel Hubertus Hitchold commanded Bomber Wing converted to transport duties and reported in mid-January that crew morale had collapsed as losses exceeded 50% over course of month. The replacement crews arriving had minimal training and were being sent into combat conditions for which they were unprepared. The maintenance personnel were working with inadequate facilities and supplies to keep damaged aircraft operational. The entire airlift operation was sustained through coercion rather than through voluntary commitment, as had characterized earlier Luftwaffe operations. The Soviet air superiority that developed through January meant that transport flights could only operate at night or during brief windows when weather grounded Soviet fighters. The restrictions on flying times reduced already inadequate delivery rates and increased crew exhaustion as night operations required skills that many pilots lacked. The accident rates from night flying in winter conditions exceeded combat losses as aircraft crashed, attempting to navigate to blacked-out airfields in darkness. Göring's meeting with Hitler in mid-January addressed airlift results and future prospects. Hitler demanded explanations for why deliveries had not met promised levels and questioned whether Göring had deliberately misled him about Luftwaffe capabilities. Göring's responses blamed weather, blamed Soviet air power, and blamed ground personnel at Stalingrad for inefficient unloading procedures while avoiding acceptance of personal responsibility for having promised what could not be delivered. The relationship between Hitler and Göring was damaged by airlift failure in ways that would affect their interactions through war's remainder. The final phase of airlift, through January, forced Göring to confront reality he had avoided acknowledging through December. The daily briefings at his headquarters documented losses that could no longer be explained away as temporary setbacks. Each morning brought reports of aircraft shot down, of missions aborted due to weather, of tonnage delivered falling further below requirements. Göring's responses evolved from demanding greater efforts to accepting that mission was beyond Luftwaffe capabilities, regardless of commitment or sacrifice. The moment of recognition came during conference in late January, when staff officer presented cumulative statistics showing that 70 days of operations had delivered less than quarter of minimum requirements while consuming half of Germany's transport fleet. Göring listened without the interruptions that had characterized earlier briefings. The silence that followed presentation indicated that Reichsmarschall understood what professional officers had known since November. The airlift had been impossible from beginning, and continuing it was destroying Luftwaffe transport capability without saving Sixth Army. The personal reckoning that Göring faced involved acknowledging that his assurances to Hitler had been based on wishful thinking rather than on realistic assessment. The reputation built on claims of Luftwaffe invincibility was destroyed by operation that exposed limitations in leadership, in planning, and in equipment. The boasts that had characterized Göring's public persona appeared hollow when measured against reality of 450 aircraft lost and Sixth Army starving despite airlift efforts. The transformation from confident promises in November to defeated silence in January represented personal and professional collapse that would define Göring's role through war's remainder. The technical realities that staff officers had warned about in November became undeniable through January operations. The Ju-52 transports designed for commercial service could not survive combat environment. The weather conditions over southern Russia exceeded capabilities of aircraft and crews. The Soviet air defenses improved weekly as defenders learned patterns of German operations. The distances involved required fuel loads that reduced payload capacity below levels needed for effective supply. Each of these factors had been identified before operations began, but had been dismissed by Göring's insistence that determination would overcome obstacles. The decision to continue operations into early February, despite recognizing futility, reflected Göring's inability to accept responsibility for failure. The final supply flights operated under conditions where crews' new missions accomplished nothing except adding to casualty lists. The pilots who flew these missions understood they were participating in gesture rather than in effective military operation. The collapse of Stalingrad Pocket in early February ended operations that had demonstrated air power's limitations rather than its potential. The last aircraft to land inside Pocket brought supplies that could not prevent surrender occurring within days. The aftermath brought Göring face to face with consequences of having promised what could not be delivered. The relationship with Hitler was damaged irreparably because trust that had characterized their partnership was destroyed by airlift failure. The Luftwaffe transport fleet was crippled with losses exceeding 450 aircraft, representing capabilities that would take years to rebuild. The crews lost represented experience and expertise that could not be replaced through training programs. The strategic lesson that air supply could not sustain large forces under combat conditions had been purchased at cost that exceeded any military value achieved. The institutional impact on Luftwaffe extended beyond immediate losses to include erosion of confidence in leadership and in operational concepts. The airlift had been presented as demonstration of air power's revolutionary potential, but had instead revealed that traditional military constraints, weather, enemy action, logistics, could not be overcome through technology or determination alone. The morale effects on surviving crews who had watched comrades die in futile missions would affect Luftwaffe effectiveness through subsequent operations. When Hermann Göring realized air supply could not save Paulus, the recognition came too late to prevent disaster and came gradually rather than a single moment of clarity. The November confidence that Luftwaffe would accomplish mission gave way through December to hope that increased efforts would succeed, then to January acknowledgement that operation was failing, and finally to February acceptance that failure was complete. The personal cost to Göring included loss of credibility with Hitler, destruction of reputation for military competence, and knowledge that thousands had died in operation he had promised would succeed. The professional cost to Luftwaffe included aircraft losses that weakened capabilities across all fronts and demonstration that German air power had limitations that rhetoric could not overcome. The Stalingrad airlift represented intersection of Göring's tendency toward optimistic overconfidence and operational realities, where weather, enemy action, and insufficient resources combined to make success impossible regardless of determination or sacrifice.